All right, guys, welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. here alongside my father, Mike Golick Sr., and a very special guest today, Notre Dame Athletic Director Jack Swarbrick. Jack, happy holidays. How you doing, sir?
Happy holidays to you guys. Great to see you. Every day you invade my my Twitter account. I read about what's going on. You guys are ubiquitous.
I see you can't use big words like that around me. I know Mike can understand that. But
putting the degree to much better use over here. Jack, I'm just amazed that you're not sick of him yet, seeing my dad constantly bombarding campus on the golf cart year-round around the neighborhood here.
Yeah, well, he brings a certain class to the neighborhood. So we're all for it. Although he shamed me with the Christmas lights. Those are really nice.
That's all my wife. She takes care of that. And as I said about my golf cart, I love the golf cart more than my kids when they were here, because back then it would be a violation for them to drive. And so I said, if you guys get me in trouble, I said, I'm disowning you. So I dig that golf cart, but I dig it certainly around Christmas time. Are you a big holiday guy?
We are, yeah. We're in. The older my kids get, the more of a challenge it is to get together. But everybody will be here in South Bend with me this year, including one grandchild, so that's great.
Oh, so you got, okay, I have my first as well. He's like 5-6 months old. So any grandparenting tips for me?
No, but isn't it great?
Oh.
It's just ideal.
Well, because you can give them back, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. No, it's we've loved it. She's I guess 10 months now.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a pure delight. She's my daughter. I don't think she ever attended a high school football game. She went to a university that didn't have a football program, and she is Notre Dame's biggest fan. So as a 2-month-old, my granddaughter Mary attended the ACC basketball tournament in Brooklyn.
Oh, nice.
As a 7-month-old, she was at the Horseshoe when we played Ohio State. She was in Las Vegas when we played BYU. So this is a 1-year. We've got pictures of this less than 1-year-old in all these venues, and every time she runs into somebody famous, they say, "Hey, can we hold her?" And so we got pictures of Lee Corso holding her and Roy Williams holding her.
Oh my gosh,
it's great fun.
That is well traveled right there. Yeah. That's impressive.
The baby photo album is going to look a lot different than me and my brother and sisters as kids.
Right. Well, one more on the holiday. Just have to ask, because I got in trouble for this so long ago, because I always had a real tree until I didn't water it enough. And my wife gave me a last chance. I dried it out again, so we've had fake for years. You a real or fake tree?
Oh, we're real. It's
good for you.
My mother would, if she were alive, she'd disown me if I did anything else. So, when does this air? I don't want my wife to hear this, but anyway, my only assignment this year, with the whole family coming, was to get the tree, and apparently people in South Bend buy their trees very early.
Yeah. Because
I went out and I can't find anything. I mean, they're all 5 feet tall or something Charlie Brown wouldn't purchase. And I'm just like, oh man, this is getting serious. So I go to, I'm running around all one night trying to find one, and I go to the last place I stop at, it's same deal, 5-foot trees and almost nothing. Drive away, I'm driving home. I said to myself, they had a beautiful tree at the entrance, all decorated and lighted. That was their promotional tree, right? I said, I wonder if they'll sell that to me. So I call. In fact, they will sell it to me. They'll take the lights and everything off because they want to keep them. And I said, that's great. The mental image of the tree that I captured by driving past it was not the same as I experienced when it was delivered to the house. So it's still in the garage because I can't figure out how to get this monstrosity into the house. I may have to walk down the street and knock on the Golic's door and get some help here.
How big? So it's really
it's
tall?
12 and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But it's the width I didn't account for.
Oh, okay.
It's
You know what? Like you said, you're doing us the kindness coming and hanging out with us today. I feel like we can give you some help with the manual labor. We're not good at a lot, Jack, but we're good at pushing and pulling. So I feel like
that's what this is, man. This is pushing a big object through a small opening.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a story like you went and cut down your own tree or something.
No, this is even better.
This is. But that's a great move. Say, you know what? Money talks, man. I go
You know what?
see if this thing's for sale.
It's like those guys, the linebackers, asking Tom Brady to sign the interception ball after the game.
Yeah.
What's the worst they can say? They can tell you no.
Yeah. That's a good move.
I'd imagine in this town, not a lot of people are going to turn you down on the request there. So
It's a good move.
We'll
Pro
help you
move.
get the Christmas tree across the goal line on this one eventually. Jack, as we sit around now, Dad and I are in town getting ready to, talk at the Notre Dame football banquet as we're recording this. Kind of a little year-end review of the team and everything they've accomplished. For you, looking back on this, the whirlwind it's been since announcing Marcus as the head coach, the offseason that he went through, really helping to go out there and be this ambassador for the program. How do you sort of sum up and grade what you've seen in year one from Coach Freeman in this program?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to sum it up is I'm even more confident in him and sure that he's the right leader for the program now than I was the day I made the decision, and I was pretty confident then. You don't learn a lot about a coach when you're beating Clemson handily. You learn a lot when you're losing to Marshall, and what that night's like, what the next day's like, how he addresses the team, how he leads. And it was compelling. I'll tell you, it was textbook. And so I feel great about the foundation. I feel great about where we are. It's as cohesive a staff as it has been in my time here, which shockingly is now 15 years. So yeah, I feel great. An unusual season that I still haven't quite digested and figured out, but feel great about where we are.
Going through that season, you being the man that hired him, when there was the loss to Marshall and there was the loss to Stanford, was there not any regret, but was there any okay, we're already out of where Notre Dame only wants to be, right, to get to the playoffs, and knowing that was going to be gone? Did that change your then perspective of the rest of the season?
It didn't. And that consistency is part of what you're looking for, right? I mean, yes, our goal is to win a national championship, and we don't have the second bite of the apple in a conference championship game that some people do. So, yeah, the consequences are different, but boy, you can't change, as you guys well know, you can't change your approach or what you do. And I loved the way the team responded. We had some things we had to figure out, and it took some time to figure them out. But it was interesting. 2 years ago, I knew we were in trouble against Cincinnati all week. You could feel it. Just people were saying and doing the right things, but it wasn't real. It just wasn't there. I didn't sense any of that before Marshall or Stanford, right? So I wasn't seeing something at practice that alerted me to a concern. The preparation felt great, and the performance just wasn't anywhere close to what it needed to be. And so you spend a lot of time trying to figure out why. And Marcus focused a lot on the teaching. He spent a lot of time saying, the answer here can't be they can't do it. The answer has to be we didn't teach it well enough. Mm-hmm. And so why not? Why did they make that error? And that was a really good approach.
So does that make, again, the weird question, because high expectations are every year, but does that make the expectations for next year that much higher?
Yeah, I think it does. I think I expect to have the staff back. I think there's a better understanding of sort of who we are and how we should approach it. And we'll see. We lose some very talented people who contribute a lot to the team, but I think in some facets we should be better. And I'm not sharing any state secrets here. In the college game and the professional game today, it's all about quarterback play. And so that's going to be a big part of what defines next year for us.
And to that end, Coach Freeman talked and was very candid about the conversation he had with Notre Dame's quarterback from this season, and Drew Pine, who's since entered the transfer portal, saying, hey, listen, we're looking at this is what our approach is going to be. And I know as former player, appreciated his honesty with the young person who had given a lot, but it speaks to that larger conversation of now we are in an era where the portal is such a part of this, where the name, image, and likeness conversation is such a part of this. How do you see Notre Dame fitting into that changing landscape now with some of those factors that have become a big part of recruiting to the school?
Yeah. How long's the show? The portal's been very interesting for us so far. We have many fewer players go in the portal than other schools. And I think that has to do a lot with the fact they pick Notre Dame. They don't just pick the football program. And so when you net out grad transfers, and frankly, often we're thrilled for grad transfers, right? They've got their degree. If they go someplace else, they are going to play more, and so they've been a great member of the team, and so that's all fine. But when you net out the grad transfers, we have very few, and so that's great. We now, like everybody else, have to pay extraordinary attention to the portal and who's in it and what help they might provide to us in areas of need. And that's not easy. I mean, you've sort of doubled your workload all of a sudden, especially with the number of young men who choose to go into the portal. So you want to stay focused on your needs. Don't just go shopping in the portal to see who's in the portal. And make sure you're bringing in people who fit. That's the biggest part of this. In the discussions I've had with Coach about specific prospective transfers, it's been much more about fit. How will this individual be in the locker room?
So it makes no sense anymore nowadays to talk about if it's good or if it's bad, if NIL is good or it's bad, because it's here. So you have to deal with it and find a way to deal with it. So as you mentioned, you've been doing this for 15 years. So you were before all this, and now it's here. And you mentioned talking to the coaches about this. So how much more difficult has it become for all of you to now, it's not just the 18-year-old in their living room, it's not just the fifth-year guy, it's everywhere in between now on when that process has to start and finish?
Yeah, NIL has changed everything, and it's unfortunate. I believe Notre Dame was the first university to publicly support NIL. In an interview in the New York Times, I think now 6 years ago or so, Father John talked about the importance of giving student athletes that right, because every other student on campus had it, right? And why, because you play a sport, should you not have that right? So we're champions of it. Unfortunately, we never anticipated it coming in to effect with no regulation, no oversight. And so what we've got now has nothing to do with name, image, and likeness. Quite literally. It's you do what used to be under the table payments, and you now call them NIL. Yep. And you not only pay it, but you celebrate it. And it is. We're going to have look, I am all for student athletes earning all the money they possibly can. But this is an unregulated process that's going to have some really sad results. I was out in Vegas when we were talking to the different commissioners, and it was interesting because one of them would say it's up to the commissioners to regulate and come up with rules. Others would say it's up to the government. It's a state rule, but will it become federal? I don't know if this is even answerable, but who's going to eventually put guardrails up for this thing? It's a great question. I think we've done a great job of conclusively proving it's not us. We can't seem to get there. And let me say, I have great hope and optimism about the new president of the NCAA. Don't know him, but the people I've talked to who do are very enthusiastic about his leadership style. So I hope he can help us, but we can't, and we're just going to have to get to a point where Congress is going to have to save us from ourselves in one form or another. I was back there recently, and a senator who has an important role in all of this looked at me in our conversation and said, "Answer one question for me." I said, "Great, sure." She said, "Who should I talk to?"
Wow.
It was couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
And she said, "You expect us to help you, and you can't even tell us who to talk to. We need leadership. We need a unified view of what should happen, and then we've got to go to Congress with our act together."
Doesn't sound like it's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I think there's likely to be trigger events. Yesterday, to no one's surprise, the NLRB in a case in California took the sentiments expressed in the NLRB General Counsel's memo a while back and identified student athletes as employees. There's a Fair Labor Standards case in Pennsylvania, which I think will likely result in the same place. I think that may be a bit of a trigger event, right? Where, okay, is this really the model we want? And where are we drawing these lines? Is the Golic who swims not an employee,
right,
but the Golic who plays football is an employee? Why is that? And so I think this may be the external event that finally causes the realization we have to do something to solve this.
You mentioned the new NCAA president's role in that, because over the last years, and I know it's made it to our side on talk radio where you hear people supposing about, does the NCAA have a role in especially big-time college football where it's already not sponsoring the championship and so much of the sport seems to have run itself up until this point? People have talked about a Power 5 breakaway. Hypothetically going forward, do you still see a role for the NCAA with big-time college football in that way?
Yeah, I think we have to. I don't think football will come under the governance of the NCAA any more than it is today. I think there are a host of reasons for that, but I think the major conferences will continue to run football effective, as a practical matter. Anything that happens in football is not happening in isolation. It has Title IX implications. It has implications for the academic model. And so we have to have the NCAA involved, and they are the likely spokesperson if we can support our new president and put him in a position to do that.
And the other thing that we see changing in college football is it just seems odd to say USC and UCLA in the Big Ten. It just seems so odd, as we know, conference realignment going. And on shows, I always get asked, what do you think Notre Dame's going to do? And I always try and channel my Jack Swarbrick and think of what he wants for Notre Dame, and I give my answer. But I mean, how has that process been? I would imagine you are receiving many more phone calls than you're making.
Well, there's certainly a period of time in the past year where there was a lot of that. From my perspective, our independence has never been more valuable to the university and to everyone who participates in it. And it's not about having some grand strategy produced it as much as it is the things that have happened have all helped position us even more effectively. It was such an interesting year for us, the past year. Very successful competitively. We won the Capital One Cup for the best men's program. But the year was all about Notre Dame, right? When you talked about conference realignment, it was all about what's Notre Dame going to do. Mm-hmm. When we talked about the playoff expansion, it was how's this going to impact Notre Dame? Is it going to force them into a conference? The remarkable video you guys were part of, and the introduction of Marcus in the locker room, those two videos dominated among college football. So the whole year was sort of about us in a sense, right? And And that just reinforced we're in a really good position. We have to have a media partner that will allow us to compete at the same level as the Big Ten and the SEC. And NBC has been a great partner, and I anticipate them continuing to be. We've got to have a home for our Olympic sports, and the ACC has been a great home for that. And we have to have fair access to the college football playoff, and I think we're in a better position with regard to that than we've ever been. So I feel great about both the value of independence and our ability to remain independent right now.
Yeah, I think the expansion helped really kind of solidify the independence because of that. It seemed to me, and one of the answers I would give, a lot does seem to fall on the media partner because, listen, we get all the things surrounding college sports, and one of them is money. And it is an important factor. So it seems to me like that's the block that needs to tip the most for Notre Dame on where that's going to end up.
Absolutely. And, that's sort of next on the agenda is to tackle that. But I'm optimistic. Again, because we've had a lot of success and we've been well positioned, I think we bring great value to a media partner. And so we're clear. We have to have revenue streams that match those schools that are perennial contenders for the national championship, and we can do that. And that's what we're going to focus on.
And that playoff expansion that helped solidify a lot of that was not an easy road to get to for all parties involved, going back to last summer when we had the first round of conference realignment that sort of rocked everyone. For you, what do you ultimately think was the final push that got everyone to buy in, outside of maybe the university presidents all stepping in and saying, hey, this is something we may need to consider?
Yeah. My initial reaction is always, I want that 18 months of my life back. First of all, as background, the four of us that worked on the initial plan, Greg Sankey, Craig Thompson, Bob Bowlesby, this is the best committee I've ever worked on in anything, right? The four people had the best interest of the game in mind, maintained absolute confidentiality for a year and a half, and it was a great experience. The adoption of it then ran into the politics of realignment, and delay sort of became inevitable, not because of anything really central to the proposal, but more about the challenges of the relationships in the room. And so we had to sort of get by that. And the final push did come from the presidents, who of course felt none of that.
Yeah, they weren't sitting in those meetings.
So it was not easier. I mean, I appreciate it was not easy for them to step in and resolve this ultimately, but they did, and we got to the result we should have gotten to the whole time.
But it seems like that, not even just in this, but in life, when a lot of people are involved, it can be difficult to come to one conclusion and one answer.
Well, that's a great point, because there were two issues here. One was, are we going to expand the playoffs? And the other was, when are we going to do it? And to do it early, everybody had to say yes, because the existing contracts had to be modified.
Right.
So it delivered to everyone an absolute veto. So whatever was important to you, you could just dig in on it, and we couldn't move forward. On the question of expansion generally, that wasn't true, right? Mm-hmm. This is just sort of a majority of the people in the room. So once we knew we were expanding, we still had some tough near-term issues, but we got through them. They were well publicized and made it.
Shout out to the Rose Bowl.
I was going to say, and I would like to know on the face of whoever was making that decision, at what point they realized we can't keep digging our heels in because this just is not going to work.
Yeah, it's a great scenic. It's a wonderful game, but
yeah,
to
it's
be
done.
the one left in the room, it seemed at that point, because it was. Is it fair to say that was one of the final hurdles? I mean, if not the final hurdle in getting to that point.
Yeah, I don't think I'm violating any confidences. It played out pretty publicly, but yeah, that was that was an interesting challenge, and was definitely impacted by realignment.
You mentioned the challenge. I'm just curious, kind of in a general sense, with your approach in all this, because you mentioned being a part of that 4-person committee, looking around college football's leadership, you always hear the 10 conference commissioners plus Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick. You and Greg Sankey looking around as the most tenured members of this group. For you, is it more of a challenge or more of an asset being the only person that has to be an athletic director also operating as a conference commissioner of sorts in these same rooms?
Yeah, well, being in that room is one of the great privileges of this job. And people often question our presence there. A few coaches in particular are sort of preoccupied with it. But what people need to remember is it's founders' equity. This never gets started without Notre Dame's agreement to participate in it. Many, many years ago now, pre-BCS, right? The first version of a national championship. And it simply doesn't happen without Notre Dame's participation. And so that's the basis on which we have remained in the room, and I think have made important contributions to it. But it's been an absolute privilege. I love doing it. I love building relationships with those individuals. But we also do bring value as the only athletic director in the room, right? Because sometimes there'll be a discussion about something, and I'll say, not really the way it works. Let me, sort of tell you from an AD's perspective why we should do something differently.
Speaking of national championship, how's it to be the athletic director of the fencing school? I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, they passed the football total this year.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. Yes.
Not that they didn't publicize that much. No, it's great, of course. And I'll tell you what, Gia has built such a great program. It's got a long tradition, of course, but the culture he has built in our program here now is really a model for program culture.
Jack, we so appreciated your time here. I want to send you out on, I think, the real hot button issue that a lot of people want to hear from you about. The Notre Dame Summer Concert Series has become a big deal around here since the stadium renovation.
Billy Joel was so good last year.
We were fortunate to get to be in the stadium for that one. It's been awesome here. If Jack Swarbrick is building out his dream guest list of the next one he wants to go after for a concert in Notre Dame Stadium, who's that artist?
Pink.
Pink?
Okay. There were a lot of names you could have said.
Okay, I didn't see that one coming.
All right, I'll bite. Are you a Pink fan? Is that where this comes from?
I'm a big Pink fan, but in terms of live shows, her aerial dynamics during a show.
Yes.
Can't you see her coming from the top of the library?
Wow.
On a zip line?
On a zip line.
Wow.
Onto the stage, right, while singing. I'm telling you.
Speed
Did anyone else just get chills?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next would be the boss.
There we go.
Well, that was kind of the rumor going around until we looked and saw, I think at that time he's in Europe. And then, I mean, my gosh, the Swiftie over here, Mr. Taylor Swift fan, was hoping that would happen.
I was going to say, listen, I know you've got a lot on your plate, you got a lot going on, but if I can just make a plea on behalf of a large section of Notre Dame fans, I feel like the brand of Taylor Swift in Notre Dame would be fantastic. She's already familiar with the campus, her brother being here for a time, so just figured I'd throw that out there while I got you in the room.
I can only get myself in trouble by responding to that.
That's a smart move.
There we go.
It's a smart move.
Jack, we so appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Always great to catch up, and go Irish.
Great to see you guys, and thanks for all you do for this university. You are extraordinary ambassadors for it. Great video stars, and so we thank you.
I appreciate that. I got that check for you. it.